Hello everyone. Today we will discuss chapter 7, Advent of the Aryans and the Age of the Rigveda. Original home and identity. The Aryans spoke the Indo-European languages which are current in changed forms all over Europe, Iran and greater part of the Indian subcontinent. Originally, the Aryans seem to have lived somewhere in the area east of the Alps, in the region known as Eurasia. Certain names of animals such as goats, dogs, horses, etc., and names of certain plants such as pine, maple, etc., are similar to one another in all the Indo-European languages. These common words indicate the fauna and flora of Eurasia. They show that the Aryans were acquainted with rivers and forests. Curiously enough, curiously enough, common words for mountains exist only in a few Aryan languages. Although the Aryans crossed many hills, their earliest life seemed to have been mainly pastoral, agriculture being a secondary occupation. The Aryans did not lead a settled life, with the result that they could not leave behind any solid material remains. Although the Aryans used several animals, the horse played the most significant role in their life. Its swiftness enabled them and some allied peoples to make successful inroads into Western Asia from about 2000 BC onwards. On their way to India, the Aryans first appeared in Iran, where the Indo-Iranians lived for a long time. We know about the Aryans in India from the Rigveda, which is the earliest specimen of the Indo-European language. The Rigveda is a collection of prayers offered to Agni, Indra, Mitra, Varuna, Agni, Indra, Mitra, Varuna, and other gods by by various families of poets or sages. It consists of 10 mandalas or books, of which books second to seventh form its earliest portions. Book first and 10 seem to have been the latest editions. The Rigveda has many things in common with the Avesta, which is the oldest text in the Iranian language. The two texts use the same names for several gods, and even for social classes. Some Aryan names mentioned in the Kassite inscriptions of 1600 BC and the Mittani inscription of the 14th century BC found in Iraq suggest that from Iran, a branch of the Aryans moved towards the west. A little earlier than 1500 BC, the Aryans appeared in India. We do not find clear and definite archaeological traces of their advent. Possibly they used socketed axes, bronze dirks, and swords, which have been discovered in northwestern India. The earliest Aryans lived in the geographical area covered by eastern Afghanistan, Punjab, and fringes of western Uttar Pradesh. Some rivers of Afghanistan, such as the river Kuba and the river Indus and its five branches, are mentioned in the Rigveda. The Sindhu, identical with the Indus, is the river par excellence of the Aryans, and it is repeatedly mentioned. Another river mentioned is the Sarvasti, now lost in the sands of Rajasthan. The area represented by it is covered by the Gaggar River. Possibly the Aryans obtained copper from the Khetri mines of Rajasthan. The whole region in which the Aryans first settled in India is called the land of the seven rivers. The Aryans came to India in several waves. The earliest wave is represented by the Rigvedic people who appeared in the subcontinent in about 1500 BC. They came into conflict with the indigenous inhabitants called the Dasas, Dasyus, etc. Since the Dasas are also mentioned in the ancient Iranian literature, they seem to have been a branch of the early Aryans. The Rigveda mentions the defeat of Sambara by Divodasa. The Rigveda mentions the defeat of Sambara by Divodasa, who belonged to the Bharata clan. In this case, the term Dasa appears in the name Divodasa. Okay, possibly the Dasyus in the Rigveda represent the original inhabitants of the country, and an Aryan chief who overpowered them was called Trasa Dasyu. Okay, the Aryan chief was soft towards the Dasas, but strongly hostile uh, towards to the Dasyus. The term Dasyu Hatya, slaughter of the Dasyus, is repeatedly mentioned in the Rigveda. The Dasyus is possibly worshipped the phallus and did not keep cattle for dairy products. Okay, tribal conflicts. We know little about the weapons of the adversaries of the Aryan peoples. Although we hear of many defeats inflicted by Indra on the enemies of the Aryans. In the Rigveda, Indra is called the Purandara. In the Rigveda, Indra is called Purandara, which means that he was the breaker of forts. But we cannot identify the forts held by the pre-Aryans. Some of them may have been Harappan settlements. However, there is no doubt about the Aryan successes, and these came because the Aryans possessed chariots driven by horses and introduced them for the first time into West Asia and India. The Aryan soldiers were probably equipped also with coats of mail, varmen, and better arms. The Aryans were engaged in two types of conflicts. First, they fought with the pre-Aryans, and secondly, they fought amongst themselves. Intra-tribal conflicts rocked the Aryan communities for a long time, divided into five tribes called Panjajana. The Aryans fought amongst themselves and sometimes enlisted the support of the non-Aryan peoples for the purpose. The Bharadas and the Tritsu. The Bharadas and the Tritsu were the ruling Aryan clans, and they were supported by priest Vasishta. The country Bharadavarsha was eventually named after the term Bharata, which appears first in the Rigveda. The Bharata ruling clan was opposed by a host of 10 kings, five of whom were heads of Aryan tribes, and the remaining five of non-Aryan people. The battle that was fought between the Bharadas and on the one hand and the host of 10 kings on the other hand, other is known as the Battle of 10 Kings. This battle was fought on the river Parushni, identical with the river Ravi, and it gave victory of Sudas and established the supremacy of the Bharadas. Of the defeated tribes, the most important was that of the Purus. Subsequently, the Bharadas joined hands with the Purus and formed a new ruling tribe called the Kurus. The Kurus combined with the Panjalas and they together established their rule in the upper Gangetic basin, where they played an important part in the later Vedic times. Material life. We can form some idea of the material life of the Rigvedic Aryans. They owed their success in India to their possession of horses, chariots, and also possibly some better arms made of bronze, of which we have no archaeological evidence. When they settled in the western part of the subcontinent, they possibly used copper supplied by the Khetri mines in Rajasthan. The Rigvedic people possessed better knowledge of agriculture. Plowshare is mentioned in the earliest part of the Rigveda, though some consider it an interpolation. Possibly this plowshare was made of wood. They were acquainted with sowing, harvesting, and threshing, and knew about the different seasons. In spite of all this, there are so many references to the cow in the Rigveda that the Rigvedic Aryans seem to have been a pastoral people. Most of their wars were fought for the sake of cows. The term for war in the Rigveda is Gavishti or search for cows. The cow seems to have been the most important form of wealth, and whenever we hear of gifts made to priests, it is stated in terms of cows and women slaves and never in terms of measurement of land. The Rigvedic people may have occasionally occupied pieces of land, but land did not form a well established type of private property. The Rigveda mentions such artisans as the carpenter, the chariot maker, the weaver, the leather worker, the potter, etc. This indicates that they practiced all these crafts. The term ayas used for copper or bronze shows that metal working was known, but we have no clear evidence of the existence of trade. It is doubtful whether the Aryans were acquainted with sea or ocean, because the word samudra mentioned in the Rigveda mainly denotes a collection of water. At any rate, the Aryans did not live in cities. Possibly they lived in some kind of fortified mud settlements, which still await to be identified satisfactorily by the archaeologists. Recently, a site called Bhagwanpura has been excavated in Haryana and three sites in Punjab. And in all these cases, painted grey ware has been found along with late Harappan pottery. The date assigned to the Bhagavan Pura finds ranges from 1600 BC to 1000 BC, which is also roughly the period of Rigveda. The geographical area of these four sites also coincides with that of a good portion of the area represented by Rigveda. Although painted graveware has been found at all these sites, neither iron objects nor cereals have been encountered. We may therefore think of a pre-iron phase of PGW, which coincided with the Rigvedic phase. It is interesting to note that at Bhagavanpura, a 13-roomed mud house has been discovered. This might indicate either a house for a large extended family or for a tribal chief. Cattle bones have been found in good quantity in all these sites. Okay, tribal polity. The administrative missionary or the Aryans in the Rigvedic period worked with the tribal chief in the center because of his successful leadership in war. He was called Rajan. It seems that in the Rigvedic period, the king's post was hereditary. However, the king did not exercise unlimited power, for he had to reckon with the tribal organizations. Although his post was hereditary, we have also some traces of election by, by the tribal assembly called the Samiti. The king was called the protector of his tribe. He protected its cattle, fought its wars, and offered prayers to gods on its behalf. Several tribal assemblies, such as the Sabha, Samiti, Vidada, Gana, are mentioned in the Rigveda. These assemblies exercised deliberative military and religious functions. Even women attended and Sabha and Vidada in Rigvedic times. But the two most important assemblies from the political point of view seem to have been the Sabha and the Samiti. These two were so important that the kings showed eagerness to win their support. In the day-to-day administration, the king was assisted by a few functionaries. The most important functionary seems to have been the Purohita. The two priests who played a major part in the time of Rigveda are Vasishta and Vishwamitra. They inspired the tribal chiefs to action and lauded their exploits in return for handsome rewards in cows and women slaves. The next important functionary seems to be the Senant, who used spears, axes, swords, etc. We do not come across any officer concerned with the collection of taxes. Probably the princess received from the people voluntary offerings called Bali. Okay. Presents and spoils of war were perhaps distributed in some Vedic assemblies. The Rigveda does not mention any officer for administering justice. Okay, but it was not an ideal society. Okay, there were cases of theft and bulgari, and especially we hear of the theft of cows. Spies were employed to keep an eye on such unsocial activities. The titles of the officials do not indicate their administration of territory. However, some officers seem to have been attached to territories. They enjoyed positions of authority in the pasture grounds and settled villages. The officer who enjoyed authority over the pasture ground is called Vajrapati. He led the heads of the families called Kulapas, or the heads of the fighting hordes called Gramanis to battle. In the beginning of the Gramani was just the head of the head of a small tribal fighting unit. But when the unit settled, the Gramani became the head of the village, and in course of time he became identical with the Vajrapati. The king did not maintain any regular or standing army, but in times of war he mustered a militia whose military functions were performed by different tribal groups called Vrada, Gana, Grama, Sarda. Okay. By and large, it was a tribal system of government in which the military element was strong. There was no civil system or territorial administration because people were in a stage of perpetual expansion, migrating from one area to another. Tribe and family. Kingship was the basis of social structure, and a man was identified by the clan to which he belonged, as can be seen in the names of several Rigvedic kings. People gave their primary loyalty to the tribe, which was called Jana. Jana. Okay, the term Jana occurs at about 275 places, 275 places in the Rigveda, and the term Janapada or territory is not used even once. Okay, the people who were attached to the tribe since the territory or the kingdom was not yet established. Another important term which stands for the tribe in the Rigveda is Vis. It is mentioned 170 times in that text. Probably the Vis was divided into grama or uh, smaller tribal units meant for fighting. When the gramas clashed with one another, it caused samgrama or war. The most numerous Varna or Vaishya arose out of the Vis or the mass of the tribal people. The term for family, Kula, is mentioned rarely in the Rigveda. It comprised not only mother, father, sons, slaves, etc., but many people also. It seems that family in early Vedic phase was indicated by the term Griha. Okay, family Griha, term Griha, which frequently occurs in the text. In the earliest Indo-European languages, the same term is used for nephew, grandson, cousin, etc. This would mean that differentiation in family relationship leading to the setting up of separate households had not proceeded far, and the family was a very large joint unit. It was obviously a patriarchal family headed by the father, as was the case in the Roman society. It seems that several generations of the family lived under same roof because it was a patriarchal society. The birth of a son was desired again and again, and especially played people prayed to the gods for brave sons to fight the wars. In the Rigveda, no desire is expressed for daughters, though the desire for children and cattle is a recurrent theme in the hymns. Okay, women could attend assemblies. They could offer sacrifices along with their husbands. We have an instance of 5 women who composed hymns, although the later text mentions 20 such women. Obviously, the hymns were composed orally, and nothing written belongs to that period. Okay, hymns were composed orally. Okay, the institution of marriage was established. Although the symbols of primitive practices survived, we hear of a proposal made by Yami, the twin sister of Yama, for establishing love relations, but the offer is resisted by Yama. We have some indications of polyandry. For instance, Maruts are stated to have enjoyed Rodasi, and the two Aswin brothers are represented as living with Surya, the daughter of the sun god. But such instances are not too many. Possibly, they indicate matrilineal traces, and we have a few instances of sons being named after their mother. In the case of, as in the case of Mamadeya, we also notice the practice of levirate and widow remarriage in the Rigveda. There are no examples of child marriage, and the marriageable age in the Rigveda seems to have been 16 to 17. Social divisions. The Rigveda shows some consciousness of physical appearance of people in northwestern India in about 1500 to 1000 BC. Varna was the term used for color. Okay, and it seems that Aryans were fair, and the indigenous inhabitants dark in complexion. The color distinction may have partially given rise to social orders, but its importance has been exaggerated by those Western writers who believe in racial distinctions. The factor which contributed most to the creation of social divisions was the conquest of the indigenous inhabitants by the Aryans. The Dasas and the Dasyus who were conquered by the Aryans were treated as slaves and Shudras. The tribal chiefs and priests acquired a large share of booty, and they naturally grew at the cost of the common people, which created social inequalities in the tribe. Gradually, the tribe society was divided into three groups: warriors, priests, and the people on the same pattern as in Iran. The fourth division was called Shudras, appeared towards the end of the Rigvedic period because it is mentioned for the first time in 10th book. Okay, 10th book of the Rigveda, which is the latest edition. We repeatedly hear of slaves who were given as gifts to the priests. They were mainly women as slaves employed for domestic purposes. It is clear that Rigvedic times slaves were not directly used in slaves were not directly uh, in agriculture or other producing activities. In Rigvedic times, slaves were not used directly in agriculture or other producing activities. In the age of Rigveda, divisions based on occupations had started, but this division was not very sharp. We hear of a family in which a member says, I'm a poet, my father is a physician, and my mother is a grinder, earning livelihood through different means. We live together. We hear of gifts of cattle, chariots, horses, slaves, etc. Unequal distribution of the spoils of war created social inequalities, and this helped the rise of princes and priests at the cost of the common tribal people. But since economy was mainly pastoral and not food producing, the scope for collecting regular tributes from the people was very limited. We do not find gifts of land, and even those of cereals are rare. We find domestic slaves, but not the wage earners. The tribal elements in the society were stronger, and social divisions based on collection of taxes or accumulation of landed property were absent. Okay, the society was still tribal and largely egalitarian. Rigvedic gods. Every religion, every people discovers its religion in its surroundings. The Aryans found it difficult to explain the advent of the rains, the appearance of the sun and the moon, and the existence of the rivers, mountains, etc. So they personified these natural forces and looked upon them as living beings to whom they gave human or animal attributes. We have a large number of such divinities in the Rigveda, which is full of hymns composed in their honor by the poets of various families. The most important divinity in the Rigveda is Indra, who is called Purandara or breaker of forts. Indra played the role of a warlord, leading the Aryan soldiers to victory against the demons. 250 hymens are devoted to him. Okay, he is considered to be the good rain god and thought to be responsible for causing rainfall. Okay, the second position is occupied by Agni, fire god, to whom 200 hymens are devoted. Fire played a significant part in the life of a primitive people because of its use in burning forests, cooking, etc. The cult of fire commanded an important place not only in India but also in Iran. In Vedic times, Agni acted as a kind of intermediary between the gods on one hand and the people on the other. The oblations offered to Agni were supposed to be carried in the form of smoke to the sky and thus transmitted to the gods. The third important position is occupied by Varuna, who personified water. Varuna was supposed to uphold the natural order, and whatever happened in the world was thought to be the reflection of his desires. Soma, okay, desires. Soma was considered to be the god of plants, and an intoxicating drink is named after him. Okay, the Rig Veda has a large number of hymens which explain the preparations of this drink from plants that have not been satisfactorily identified so far. The Maruts personified this storm. Thus, we have large number of gods who represent different forces of nature in one form or another, but are also assigned to human activities. We also find some female divinities such as the Aditi and Ushas, who represented the appearance of the dawn. Okay, but they were not prominent in the time of the Rigveda. In the patriarchal setup of the period, the male gods were far more important than female. The dominant mode of worshipping the gods was through the recitation of prayers and offering of sacrifices. Prayers played an important part in the Rigvedic times. Both collective and individual prayers were made. Originally, every tribe or clan was the votary of a special god. It seems that prayers were offered to gods in chorus by the members of a whole tribe. This also happened in the case of sacrifices. Agni and Indra were invited to partake of sacrifices made by the whole tribe. Jana, offerings of vegetables, barley, etc., were made to the gods. But in Rigvedic times, the process was not accompanied by any ritual or sacrificial formula. In Rigvedic times, the process was not accompanied by any ritual or sacrificial formula. At this stage, the magical power of the word was not considered so important as it came to be in later Vedic times. Why did people worship gods in the time of the Rig Veda? They did not worship gods for their spiritual uplift or for ending the mysteries of existence. They asked mainly for praja, children, pashu, cattle, food, wealth, health, etc. Okay, so we have completed chapter 7. In next video, we will discuss chapter 8, the later Vedic phase, transition to state and social formation. Okay, thank you for listening me. We'll see you in next video. Thank you very much.